Laisha Harris moved to Texas in 2017 and taught eighth grade middle school girls before going to law school. Her students encouraged her to get back into the community and work towards a change that she so desperately wanted to see in the world. She then went to and graduated from Thurgood Marshall School of Law at Texas Southern University. Currently, she serves as an assistant public defender at the Harris County Public Defender's Office. She is the author of A Tale of Two Americas and Qualified Immunity, the Court's Brainchild, and A License to Kill, published by The Bridge. She is also the creator organizer of Legal Boot Camp, which is an interactive community program that breaks down how the government and law works for kids and non-lawyers. She was recently honored with the Houston Peace and Justice Center Local Peacemaker Award. And I can see why it is that you were awarded, because someone so young with such accomplishments, I think it is extremely commendable. Man, are you ambitious?
I am.
You know,
So
that is very good. So let's get started. I like people to know who you are first. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. What brought you this? I mean, I don't know how many people your age have two books out already and has a whole license or a plan to teach people a procedure. I mean, that is not quite common.
it's not. But I do want to clarify, they're not books. They're just lengthy articles. But I do hope to compile it with a bunch of other writings to essentially be a book.
Well, I don't mind calling a lengthy article a book because I've seen people come out with 10-page books. All right. So,
That's fair.
so
Okay, I'll accept that.
yeah, so I mean, again, writing is not an easy thing. I do a lot of it, and I know that it's not an easy thing. So, anyhow, tell us a
Mhm.
little bit about your upbringing, because I mean, I am when I heard your speech at the Houston Peace and Justice Center, I can't tell you how impressed I was. So, tell us a little bit about your upbringing.
I was born in Omaha, Nebraska. My mom was a single mom, teenage parent. My dad was not around, but my mom was adopted by a white family. So my grandmother, rest in peace, exposed myself and my brother and my mom to a bunch of things that I truly believe we otherwise wouldn't have had she not been there for us. So we went camping, we went to museums. I got into theater. I play the piano and the violin. I paint. She introduced us to a lot of things that I think made me a very diverse type of person.
Mhm.
And then my mom moved around a lot. So I think I went to 11 different schools by high school graduation.
Wow.
Yeah, a new school almost every year.
Well, let me stop you a second there before you finish. Did that do anything to you psychologically, not having a
Yes.
permanence? Okay. All right, continue, please.
100%. It's definitely hard to make friends because I'm
Hmm.
so used to being the new girl and then, moving quickly, so not really having that community, but it actually kind of jumped off the ledge when I moved to Houston and I started teaching because those kids are still my kids. Their families, if they see me out, they'll be like, "Hi, you remember me? I'm Paris's mom." And but my mom and my grandma both exposed me to a lot of different things. So I feel like I have a very nuanced perspective of things. And so my upbringing was definitely interesting, but the benefits of it was that I have the ability and capacity to want to understand people from different backgrounds and then use that to try to find some type of common ground.
Now, where were the different places that you moved around? Was it within Nebraska or was it just around the country?
So I went to Nebraska. I was born in Nebraska. My mom moved to Pine Bluff, Arkansas for college. Then we moved back to Nebraska. I've lived in Austin, San Antonio, Kyle, Texas, Dublin, California, Oakland, California, Phoenix.
Wow.
And I think I moved on from one side of Omaha to another side. So I was by 52nd and Dodge, but then I moved over towards 72nd. So yeah, I moved around a lot.
Now, it's Omaha, Nebraska. I've never been to Omaha, one of the big cities. How big is it? Is it the size of Austin? Little smaller, little bigger?
It's growing. I wouldn't say it's as big as Austin, but it's definitely bigger than it was when I was down there. But
Hmm.
it's beautiful. You get four seasons.
Mm.
The snowstorms aren't super bitter. It's beautiful to look at. The air smells fresh. I very much wouldn't move back there, but I visit.
You like it?
Definitely enjoy the environment.
Is your grandma still out there, or is she?
My grandma passed away.
You did say that. You did say that.
Yeah. And my grandpa is still there. So, my grandma's mostly the reason why I came back, but they just moved my grandpa from Arizona to Nebraska. So, he's my reason to go back.
Got you. We got you. Well, look here. So, I mean, it seems to me like what I saw in your speech is a very, very well-rounded person, and I find it now that you've told me how much you've moved around, I find that amazing. But more importantly, I think it gives you the background necessary to deal with the people that you're dealing with right now and understanding the different behavioral types, etc. Being at the public defender's office now. What are your passions? And I'm getting somewhere with these.
So my passion's always kind of been rooting for the underdog. And then of course, creative expression. I read a lot and I immersed myself in a bunch of different genres of books. So I have an enormous imagination. And then because I was growing up in Nebraska in a family that didn't emphasize race. So
Hmm.
like my mom, they actually adopted three African Americans, well, two African Americans, one African. And then they had two kids of their own, but race wasn't a thing. So it wasn't until I moved to Bryant, Arkansas that I ever got called the N word with the hard ER.
Hmm.
And I was probably like 14, but it was new to me.
Hmm.
And before then, I always had a desire to befriend and help out and take care of others who might have been sitting alone at lunch or might have been in a different classroom or I've always cared about people, and so a combination of that and the personal experiences that I had as a Black woman who went to high school and college in Arkansas. There was actually the year I decided to move, there was a Klan rally around the corner from the Sonic that I would go to frequently.
You actually experienced a Klan rally at your wow. Okay.
They still had Confederate flags when I was
Yeah.
there, but I didn't know what I know now. But once I started to learn those things, I became more and more passionate about honoring who I am, honoring where I came from, and then not letting others get like I don't like people being taken advantage of. I don't like people being manipulated and gaslit and ran over the way our people are. And so at some point I was just like, yeah, no, we're not doing that. We're
Now, in
gonna
growing up in
do
this
something else.
mixed in growing up in this mixed family, did they your grandma, your grandpa, did they make the effort to, in as much as you were the attempt of some sort of color blindness was there, did they try to also let you know what things that you would have gone through, similar to what happened to you in Arkansas?
I'd say no, not
Hmm.
directly.
Hmm.
Growing up. Now, once I got older and I was able to have those conversations with my grandma, um, things were different. But I also think like my grandparents weren't revolutionaries,
Hmm.
but I don't think they had the full capacity to understand what it was like to live as a person of color. It's one thing to raise one, but it's another one to be out in the world. And
Hmm.
so I don't think they had an understanding of what it meant and how it would impact me
Hmm.
or us, which is how I think I was able to grow up and not have that be a concern. So like
Hmm.
I hung out with people because they were people, but it wasn't until I got older that I started thinking back, oh, well, Brittany's family never invited me over. And they had these really strict rules when I was in the house, but I didn't as a kid, I didn't know that it could have been because I was her only Black friend.
Strict rules.
Um she couldn't come out after a certain number of time. We were only allowed to be in the living room or the backyard, and I couldn't go to they had, it's not a basement, but it's like below ground. There was like a
Mhm.
little area down there that I say but like we weren't allowed to go there.
Okay, interesting, interesting. Okay, now so there were a lot of things happening because of who you were, but you didn't quite know it then because of how you grew up. That's interesting. Now that you've grown up, you went to college in Arkansas, you became a teacher. Do I have that time incorrect? You became a teacher, you came to Texas, you started teaching the eighth grade.
Yes, I graduated from undergrad in Arkansas. I started working for Enterprise. I had to take a pause because of my seizures. So for those about 4 or 5 years, I was spending a lot of time painting and selling
Hmm.
my art. So I did that, and then I started teaching.
And then you started teaching. Now,
Mhm.
you teach inner city, middle city, mix kind of a
I taught at an all-girls school in Northeast Houston, and they were Black and brown girls in the not so financially off as other communities.
okay. Now, in that environment, how did you feel as far as these girls? Did you feel some sort of a kinship with them, or
So I'd had my woke phase before I started teaching.
tell
So
me about it. Tell me about that.
I brought a lot of between it started with Trayvon Martin while I was still in Arkansas, and then it just continued on and on and on and on. So a lot of the history and pride that I had, I definitely took it with me to school. So it was really great because a lot of my kids, a lot of the Hispanic kids would give me insight as to how their family perceives color. I had one kid who told me that her dad told her she could never bring home a black man. And when I pried more, it was because that community in South America has a history of dividing people by color. And then, of course, I've got my black girls who don't know how to love themselves as who they are and how to embrace everything that comes with being a wonderful, smart black woman. So I think I was able to bring a lot of that into the classroom. And I think it also helped me build really strong relationships because I saw myself in almost every one of those girls. And it made it easy to be able to connect and try to foster that thing that she doesn't see, but I see and I know it's possible. It was really fun. I miss it, honestly. I miss my kids. I miss the
Yeah, I
classroom.
can see that you love
Yeah.
teaching. I could hear it in the voice as well. Now, in Arkansas, so you developed your sort of, you discovered, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you sort of discovered who you are or the way people saw you when you got to Arkansas. And during that
Mhm.
time, the Trayvon Martin time, you actually became active because you discovered that, well, there's something here that needs to be fought about, if you will.
Correct.
Now, and in the process, when you got out and you went through your 5 year pause and started teaching, that was an extension of you bringing all these new things into your life to help others that needed that kind of a help.
Indirectly,
Okay.
because I needed a job.
Hmm.
I have epilepsy and I had a lot of seizures around that time, so it wasn't feasible for me to hang down a job. So I was living with my grandma for a while
Hmm.
and I needed a job. So I was just applying to stuff and I thought that it was going to be a like TA teachers program. Like I was going to learn how to be a teacher. I
Hmm.
didn't know that it was so hands-on of an experience that you were just going to do.
Yeah.
Literally until the like second interview, I was like, I'm gonna be in the classroom. So it was initially a shock. The first year was definitely me learning the lay of the grounds, but yes, once I realized what I was doing, maybe about 2, 3 weeks in, I was like, oh, I kind of like this. This is kind of fun.
And then you like the kids. Okay, so then after you taught for a while, how long did you teach before you went to third law school?
4 years, I
And
think. The last year was I kept teaching up until law school, so I stopped teaching my 1L semester because it
and
was
the,
COVID times, and so
right.
it was on. Yeah.
Yeah. So you got through law school and you completed law school, you got your law degree, and then your life began again. And you went to work
Yes.
for the public defender's office in Harris County.
Mhm.
Now, what I think one of the reasons that we were so taken with you as well is at this young age, you do a lot of work at there. Tell us a little bit what you do at this public defender's office and what kind of folks do you find yourself helping out?
Well, I am a public defender, so most of my clients are indigent, and I know I can only say so much. So I'm trying to make sure that whatever I'm
No, no,
saying is
I got it.
correct.
I got it. I got it. I
They
understand.
usually have there are a large number of people in Harris County who are indigent and suffer from mental illness that don't particularly get the assistance that they need. I'm also chair of the Systemic Change Committee, which started when I got there.
In other words, you started it. Yeah.
More or less. And one of the things that I thought was really important, because I spent a couple months in there and I was seeing a lot of stuff that is blatantly unconstitutional, but
Hmm.
immoral and
Hmm.
inhumane. And it's just like, and people are like, that's the name of the game. That's how it is. And I'm like, who's gonna do this for 20 years? Because that's like, there's no way that this is gonna work. So the Systemic Change Committee is a group of, attorneys, and we're just trying to think about ways to increase judicial economy, make sure that our clients aren't being manipulated and taken advantage of, and that the law enforcement officers aren't doing all of the crazy things that law enforcement officers are doing. And so a lot of my work is, helping out my clients, making sure that what they want to happen is what happens. And then another part of it that I like that I don't haven't gotten too full into is just taking what I'm learning at work and figuring out ways to make it better for other people.
That's, I mean, and you know what? If we had more doing that, think about where we would be. We wouldn't have, I mean, I think a lot of the recidivism and all of that would be gone. But tell me a little bit about A Tale of Two Americas.
So, A Tale of Two Americas was the first piece of legal writing that I did. It is basically about the differences between the way police officers are perceived in Black and brown communities and white communities, and the history of police. I know that we all know that police officers started off as slave catchers, but there's also another perspective from another community about where they came from. So there's also a difference there's just a difference in the way the stories are told, that I thought it was appropriate to tell all the stories at once about what it is like to experience police officers as a Black person, but then how it's perceived as a white person. So there's a nice little segment. Well, all of them are really nice, but there's a nice little segment where I'm talking about the lynching and the Jim Crow laws and vigilantes taking justice into their own hands, where law enforcement was nowhere to be found. And we don't talk about that. But putting it in that context of just, a tale of two Americas. One America is the America that sees law enforcement as upstanding citizens who are supposed to protect and serve the community. And then you've got another America that is afraid of law enforcement, that hyperventilates when they see traffic lights in their background, and those who generally don't trust the system. So I thought it was just a fun way to put those things together.
And that's great. And how can folks find that document to read?
You can find it on Earl Carl Institute's The Bridge Digital Journal. It's The Bridge Legal Perspectives Interdisciplinary. If you Google it,
Okay, but
it
no,
should pop up. I'm so sorry.
that's all right. Let me ask you this. Is it something that everybody would have access to?
Yes.
Okay, great. Because I mean, you mentioned that, and a lot of people, we have a diverse audience here, and a lot of people would take a look and say, like, well, police are police. And I was going to the radio station to do a program with one of my friends from Kingwood, a white friend here, and there's a cop that pulled up on his motorcycle next to us. And he's there waving at the cop, and I'm holding my wheel straight and looking straight
Mm-hmm.
ahead. And I looked at
Mm-hmm.
him and I said, I wanted to speak to him at that immediate time. And I said, you see how you feel sort of that kinship with the police officer? It's your friend.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel that, because I see that as I just need to get out of your sight as soon as possible, so that there's
Mm-hmm.
no idea that you would say, let me check him out for some reason. And
Right.
I imagine your document covers that behavior either implicitly or explicitly. Now, what when you thought about this, how much of this was your lived experience versus the people that you are defending's lived experience?
In the
And
tales.
yes, yes.
Oh, that was all fact. That was legal. Those are all true stories, things that have been site checked by reputable sources. So it was very little, and it was published before I was a public defender. So it was very little about my own personal experience and those of my clients, but it was formatted in a way that, so you remember what I was saying about effective communication and
Yes,
making sure that I'm able to get. So one thing that I'm trying to do with my writing is make it difficult to dispute.
I know exactly. You want it to be irrefutable.
Yeah, that, and I didn't want to, I thought about the word, I didn't want to mess it up, but I want it to be something that it's going to be very hard for you to challenge it. And then if you do challenge it, then it's going to cause you to challenge something else that I'm okay with you challenging, but it's not going to be my job to help you get there. So a lot of my writing is written in a way where if you are willing to accept it to be true, then we're moving in the right direction. But if you're not willing to accept it to be true, then you're going to have to reevaluate why you think that in order to be able to have discourse about the information that we're talking about.
Now, I want to go in two more places before we're done here. The first is a boot camp. And while you're thinking about the boot camp, I then want to go over your speech at the HPJC. So let's talk about the boot camp. Tell me a little bit about why you felt the reason to create that boot camp that you have to teach people about the law.
Yes. I actually came up with the idea when I was studying for the bar exam. Because of my teaching experience, I have a different way to look at and learn and intern, like because I had to do it for my kids, I know how to do it for myself. So I did a lot of that throughout school. And when I was studying, I realized that there are ways to make this simple. It's not because it would make attorneys' jobs less meaningful, but there's ways to make this information concise. So I initially started it to just be an elective course that I could go back and teach at my old school. And then it wasn't until I had a meeting with Jacqueline Griffin on her Zoom call, and I was talking about my qualified immunity paper.
Explain who she is first of all.
So Reverend Jacqueline Griffin is an amazing young woman. She's founded the Justice for Evanly Custody to Casket organization for her son who lost his life in Harris County Jail, along with many others. And she's been great at getting out there, speaking on what she knows to be right, trying to get justice for her son. She's been in Austin. She's going to Washington. So she's part of the
She's
reason
fighting the
why
fight. Yes.
yeah, she's fighting the fight and she's helping me see how I can also fight the fight.
Yeah. Okay. Continue with the boot camp.
So she hosts Sunday meetings every Sunday, and I went to one and I was talking about my qualified immunity paper. And it was very difficult. One, I realized that I was talking too high. So then I had to kind of get out of my lawyer mode. And I realized that there were some things that we as lawyers assume non-lawyers know. And then there's those in the community who don't know how things work. So they have this genuine misconception. And the big problem was the simplest thing was the difference between a civil case and a criminal case. And when I realized that there were other people out there who didn't know that difference, I'm like, that's very important. That's very fundamental. And there's a lot of things about the law that people don't take advantage of because they don't know what that is. And I thought, hey, I got time and I have the capacity. So why not put something together that gives the community access to a system that they use against us because we don't know how it works. And maybe if we know that our landlord has certain expectations that they can't turn off my water and my power and then evict me, those types of things. That home part was a little personal because there was a apartment complex that was without electricity for about 10 days before the city had got involved. So I went down there and I made like demand letters and pamphlets for them of just like, hey, this is what you need to do because they were trying to tell them to pay for the damages and stuff because the apartment complex lost power. And that's not how the property code works, but they didn't know that. So those types of things, it's just like they're going to continue to take advantage of us if we don't know who we need to hold responsible and how we go about doing that. And so it's free too.
So how big is this boot? Is it a book or is it something that they do over several days?
So it started off as something that you could do over 2 days, but then I realized time commitment. So there's 8 sessions to the to the program. Right now, it's something that we're only doing in person, but I am working on a digital format of it now. But there's 8 sessions that talk about different points of the law or the legal system that can help you be able to move forward. So there's one for federal, state, and local elections and roles, and like who's the commissioner's court, who's the county attorney, those things. There's what to do when you're interacting with the police, what to expect when you've been charged with a crime. There's some know your rights ones. And then there's, of course, the difference between civil and criminal and why voting is tremendously important.
And how do they learn about your boot camp?
So there is an Instagram page that is legal_bootcamp that has links to the registrations, the calendar, and more information as well. Right now, we're accepting registrations for groups, but as soon as I get confirmation from hopefully my law school, we're hoping to be able to host sessions for individuals to register, and we'd probably hold those classes on a Saturday.
And these are all free for the community?
This is free for the community, yes.
We're
volunteer, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is great. Okay, lastly, I want to talk a little bit about your speech at the HPJC. I think you said you're a Gen Z person, is that correct?
I was born in 1990.
Okay, and you're 1 year older than my daughter. Now, here is the interesting thing. It was actually touching when you spoke about your experience when you think about politics, when you think about how the system gives you worth. Why don't you tell us a little bit of that section of your speech? Because I think that is the part that grabbed the most people. And if you look around, there are tears in a lot of folks' eyes as you spoke about your feeling that you just can't do enough no matter how much you do. Talk to us about that.
Well, they call it imposter syndrome, and it wasn't like I wasn't sure why there were some judges and older attorneys that I was talking to that were saying, you're really gonna have to overcome imposter syndrome. And I'm like, I know where I'm supposed to be. Like, it's fine. I'm not worried about feeling like I don't belong, but I think I'm a really awesome person. So like I walk with that confidence. And then you'll have an interaction with somebody else that'll really make you question that. And it's not even from a point that like they're right. It's just like, wow, that's really how you think. That's really how you feel. I had a judge tell me that I was a good girl for not talking back to her, or not, no, for not speaking when I wasn't supposed to. And I did sign an oath to demean myself for the law, but I didn't think they literally meant demeaning. And you walk into a space, you passed the bar exam, you have a license to practice. Why are you asking me if I'm a defendant and telling me that I'm not supposed to be over here? Do I not look like I belong? I'm wearing a suit. And you're still okay. And it's just like those types of instances, those types of things. When I grew up, or when I was growing up, looking at what it meant to be a judge or an attorney, we didn't have Black judges as entertainment. We had Black attorneys, but that's the goal. Like, you're like, I'll get there, and then that's when I'll get the respect or the credit or the decency, honestly. And then you get there. And it's like, I've done all of these. I am so much more competent than my counterparts. And yet this is the person that's getting the credit. I'm trying to word it correctly. I didn't realize that it was that blatant. And I think that's why I had so much optimism about the election, because she's awesome. I'm awesome. Ketanji Jackson, we're all awesome, And yet nobody wants to see that awesomeness because they can't see past how I look. Or you're holding me to this unrealistic standard that you're not even holding to this person. I like to compare a lot of the election stuff with like my interactions with the state or with prosecutors, because they just got out of life. Like, they're 25. I've experienced life. But you're making decisions about somebody's freedom and you have no idea what it's like to be out in the real world, but you get that authority. Or there's a judge that makes the most craziest statement, and everybody knows that that's just him, and nobody has any higher expectations. Like, that's, you hear that name and you just know that you're going to hear something crazy. But I know if a judge that looked like me were to do something like that, they would get reprimanded. They would get reprimanded in ways that they probably might not even be on the bench anymore. So it's like I'm doing all of these things, but if it's not reaching the people that I want it to reach, and if it's not going anywhere, and the only way that I'm going to be able to get it to go somewhere is if someone like you is on my side, it's like, what are we doing? I can do all the most amazing things in the world, but if nobody sees me for what I am and sees the value in the things that I bring, have I actually made it in an authentic way?
Well, I want to close by telling you that first of all, you have made it in the authentic way, number one.
Thank you.
Number two, and this is the same thing that I would tell my daughter. And I'm going to tell you a quick story here. My daughter went to med school at Howard University. She completed her med school, but she will never practice medicine. And the reason she will never practice medicine is that she's had two strokes on her third year and her second year that almost killed her, or rather, fourth year that almost killed her. I moved to DC to take care of her, and we brought her back. And guess what profession she will be able to do? And that is teaching. And so far, she's been rubbing at it, and she loves it.
I love that.
She just can't use her left side to be able to do all the medical stuff and
Mhm.
etc. But at one point with the exam, because again, she tried to take the exam right after the stroke, and with somebody who had a brain injury, that's not an easy thing to do. And she had a hard time, and I had to explain to her that one of the problems in our society is we have allowed the leaders of our society to measure us, to define what makes us great, to make that
Mhm.
exam the thing that makes us great, to make that thing make us great. And that isn't what makes us great. You were awarded the Houston Peace and Justice Award, not because you had a law degree from you know where. You were awarded the Peace and Justice Award because of who you are, what you have done within our society, and what you actually mean to society. All the credentials that the guy gave you, it's
Mhm.
good to operate in that sphere, in
Yeah.
that domain.
Yeah.
But your value to society is the boot camp. Your value to society is a tale of Americas, informing, instructing. Why I wanted so badly to speak to you is as a young woman. I wanted to let you know that, we have to expand our horizons as far as thinking what gives us value. You don't
Mhm.
get value from the man.
Yeah.
Value is
Yeah.
intrinsic, and
Mhm.
that is what you've done. That
Appreciate
is
that.
what you have done, and that is why you're awarded, and that's why you will be going places. So, I close my interviews with the same statement. What would you have liked me to ask you that I didn't? I always stump people when I do that.
It's not something I wanted you to ask, but it was something I thought you'd ask
Okay.
about my qualified immunity paper. But when you didn't, I was like, it's not that that's not
Well,
a
tell me
thing
about it
anymore.
because remember, I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know what all these things mean.
So qualified immunity is the reason why law enforcement officers aren't held accountable for when they shoot and kill unarmed people of color. And when the court gave their opinion for overturning the Roe versus Wade decision,
Mhm.
I used that logic to argue the case from qualified immunity and basically explain to the court why it's wrong and why it shouldn't exist. So again, using those irrefutable facts to make my point. It's 50 pages. It's very dense. And I wanted to make I wanted to transform it to make it more reader friendly, but with publishing stuff, I'm just not sure how I'd be able to do it. But that's a great paper for, civil rights attorneys who are suing law enforcement officers and agencies and stuff. It's a tool that they can use to get that argument on the books. So hopefully if we have a decent Supreme Court, they could rule on it.
Well, I love that. Look, I would suggest that you turn it first into a book and then you turn it into an online annotated for the neophytes like myself who know
Nice.
nothing about the law. But anyway,
Yeah.
look, Laisha Harris, it's been my pleasure to speak to you. And again, thank you for all that you're doing for our society. We need to have a whole lot more Laishas out there. And I'm sure with what you're doing, you will be generating quite a few more. So thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me, and I hope you have a blessed week.
Yes, ma'am.
I want you guys to listen to this interaction between Stephanie Rule and Eddie Glaude, because Eddie Glaude finally got her to do something rarely you would see a host do, Norman. I want you to listen to this, and then we'll take it on the other side.
All right, let's go.
Eddie, the fact that we were all so blindsided by the election results, does that tell us that identity politics is silencing people? Because even I can see in my social media feed in the last couple of days, all these people are suddenly like, yeah, that was my guy. We're hearing stories in the suburbs the day after the election. People are now putting Trump signs up.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, but let's be clear, Trumpism is a form of identity politics.
Amen.
We don't want to say that this, my beautiful white skin, remember? That's what he said?
Yeah.
Tucker Carlson saying in Madison Square Garden, we have been given permission to call BS on this wokeism stuff. We will no longer be made to feel guilty. That comes straight out of, we will not be replaced. That came straight out of Tucker.
There were a lot of people who voted for Donald Trump who didn't listen to the rally and who don't know who Tucker Carlson is, but who are super unhappy about inflation, that they can't afford their lives and they voted for him. And they're not buying into fascism.
I get that, but I think they have an idea, though, that whenever the incoherence of the country comes into full view, the tricky magic of falling into place, falling behind a notion of whiteness that could hold off all the reason why all hell is breaking loose economically, right, is because big government is putting its thumb on the scale and redistributing resources from deserving people to undeserving people, right? So there's this sense, right, that whiteness, right, is under threat. The demographic shifts. The country isn't what all of these racially ambiguous children on Cheerios commercials are confusing the hell out of me.
A lot of people voted because their life's too damn expensive, and it was here, and
they voted for. You're telling me that all of these people who believe that their lives are, that bread is too high and eggs are too high, that they voted for a convicted fella, a guy who said we can grab the pea.
I think that a lot.
They voted for this guy.
I'm not defending it. But I think there are tons of people that don't pay attention to, and I'm not defending it, don't pay attention to politics at all. But while we live in the most prosperous country in the world, people are saying, life's not fair, I'm not doing well, my son's still living in the basement, I can't seem to get a job, I don't like the status quo, I'm voting for something else, and he was the person.
I love you to life,
I love you.
But I do not believe that. I cannot believe that. And the reason I think you believe it is because you don't want to believe that that's what's really motivating them. It's always the case. People don't want to believe what the country actually is, because if they believe it, they're going to have to confront what's in them. I don't believe that. They voted for a crook, a person who they know is stealing from, just doing everything to undermine the so-called country that they love. And then they're telling us the BS that it's economics. We know that's not true. We know it's not true. And we got to raise our kids in this shit. Oops.
You're allowed.
Go ahead.
You're allowed.
I do think it's pretty clear that we don't share the same deal breakers as a country that I would have hoped for.
Okay, this is what I think.
So This is
what I think. This is what I think.
Which is to say that there are certain things that should obviously be disqualifying. How he has approached the question of race alone is disqualifying.
Agreed.
Without question. What he has done in the laundry list you just alluded to, felonies, rape in a civil trial, down the list, 40 or so cabinet members who say, we cannot work for this guy, we cannot support this guy.
Yes.
All of that stuff. Why isn't it disqualifying? On some level, it's because they opted in and saw it and said, not bothered by it. Not as important to me as change that I personally can believe in, selfishness, right? But the other thing that makes this so bleak that I keep on returning to is that some people also just don't care enough to know and or just don't know. Right? When I think about the way that
I'm not excusing it, but I think that's the case.
I wish I could isolate the variable of malice versus ignorance. I believe that a recurring through line of our time is that it's becoming increasingly impossible to know. And maybe that's a distinction without a difference, right? Maybe we have the responsibility to know, but we are living in a media ecosystem in which there is no mainstream. And Eddie, I just can't count on everybody having the information in a way that I grew up knowing and hoping our country would.
Anyway, did Eddie Glaude do the right thing finally on national TV in the way he addressed her with love, but in the way he addressed Stephanie Rule?
I think he did. I think that is what a lot of other people, POCs have been saying this a long time. We're the ones at risk. We didn't pull a race card.
Right.
It's been created for us. So, so if you're in a situation in which you cannot say, look, my country is not what I thought it was.
And that is a hurtful part. I mean, a lot of people think that most Americans are hurting because Kamala didn't get elected. It's not that we're hurting because Kamala didn't get elected. They're hurting because America looked into their faces and said, you know what? A person who's done all that America said you're supposed to do. You got an education. You got a good job. You service the community. You are, for the most part, truthful. Running up against a criminal, not just somebody that we think is a criminal, somebody by his own words, by his own deed is a criminal. And you lose an election and then you claim it's the economy. Norman, no matter what, it may be true that the economy for many, it's bad. That may be true.
Yes.
But the truth of the matter is it's no different or not substantively different than when Donald Trump crashed the economy and we rebuilt.
No. Look, we all want to have a scapegoat for this. But in reality, what happened for me on Wednesday was I had to come face to face with the destruction of the myth of the America that I believed in.
Yeah.
I believed in a country that was post-World War II. People would stand up against fascism. I thought people were strong in their belief in each other. I'm disappointed.
You gotta
I've got a wake-up call in my own people because I'm an American. Above all things, I choose to live here, and this is where I want to be. But I'm disappointed.
And justifiably so. And until hosts like Stephanie Rule stop thinking that somehow that this election was because of economic issues, other than the core issue. And you hear the media trying to analyze in all different forms, not to say basically why Kamala lost. Kamala lost not only for the same reason Hillary lost, but she also lost for her hue. And until we realize that, we're going nowhere. So I want to thank Eddie Glaude for being brave enough to go on national TV and say something that we all know. Stephanie Rule doesn't want to know it because at the core, she's going to have to say, a lot of my friends and family, that's who they are.
Hold on. I don't think it's because Stephanie Rule doesn't know it. I think
she doesn't want to know it.
She does. She's not allowed to say this. This is corporate media.
You know what? I think you're right.
This is a tangible thing. She wants to sell herself. She will not call out her own folks in her own back room that do bad things, right? She won't say anything about all the things that happened in 2016, all the way up to this election.
Norman, I think I gotta agree with you. So I think Stephanie Rule knows better, but she's also looking out for her interests as well. But she gave, at least there's one thing we got to give her latitude for. She gave Eddie Glaude the opportunity to say what both you and I know.
And thanks, Eddie Glaude, for saying it out loud.
Absolutely. Folks, we have to live in a better country. We have to fix this country.
Welcome to another edition of Politics and Right. My name is Egberto Willies. As you guys know, I talk a whole lot about healthcare and how deficient our healthcare system is. I have a daughter who's had 2 strokes, and we have to go through machinations for her healthcare. Luckily, because she is very disabled, she was able to qualify for Medicaid, but most people in Texas, because we refused to accept the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act, are unable to get Medicaid, even as they absolutely need the care. Our politicians in Austin, in effect, claim to be moral patrols, moral police, but yet they're allowing many of the citizens in their state, in the state of Texas, to die, be maimed, or be hurt because from an ideological standpoint, they refuse to accept the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act, which we are all paying for already. It's paid for, but we don't accept it. That for the 10% that Texas would pay for it, they rather see their patients, their citizens die. Today, I'm honored to have Arturo Dominguez, who's a journalist, who's had strokes himself and who is under the boot of this horrendous healthcare system that we have in the United States, but specifically Texas. Arturo, thank you so kindly for being here on Politics Done Right to discuss your situation. Arturo, tell us a little bit about yourself, first of all.
Well, I'm a former government contractor. I did a lot of work for Homeland Security and particularly FEMA, mostly FEMA. And in 2014, I had a stroke, basically put me out of business. Within a year, we were bankrupt, lost our house, lost all of our vehicles, but the one that was paid off, which was stolen last year, by the way.
Oh, boy.
And so anyway, since then I've been, basically homeless. I live with family, got my grandkids running around and don't have health insurance, too poor.
Let me back up there. You said you don't have health insurance. The reality is, outside of any governmental system, nobody will even give you a health insurance because of the condition, right?
Right. There's that. And then, because in Texas, they haven't done Medicaid expansion because, Republicans are so smart. There's a lot of people in this state that fall into a gray area. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't know this, but to qualify for, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, you actually have to make some kind of money, and you have to be just above the poverty line.
Let me stop you there because a lot of people don't understand that. Let me tell you how Obamacare is paid for if you get onto Obamacare in a state that doesn't have the Medicaid expansion to the Affordable Care Act. What you are doing is using your own taxes that you would normally have paid into Obamacare, into the government. They're simply saying, we are going to use your tax dollars to pay the premiums for your health care. So they make you believe like it's a big subsidy, but in effect, it is your taxes being used to pay the premium. And there are reasons why they do that. None of it honorable, but I just wanted to let you know that people that are on Obamacare, even though they may be paying $10 a month or $20 a month, most of that premium is coming from the taxes that is shifted from general taxes to pay for the premium. Thank you.
Right. And the other side of that gray area is in Texas, if you make more than $300 a month, you don't qualify for Medicaid, especially without children. If, all my kids are grown, they're in their 20s. So having children is a qualifier to get Medicaid if you're disabled. And since all my kids are grown, I don't qualify. On the same note, I've tried applying for disability. I've had issues with that over the last 10 years and haven't been able to get disability. If I did, then I would qualify for Medicare. So I'm in this particular situation where I have to pay cash for everything, doctor's visits, prescriptions, and things like that. And as far as prescriptions go, I'm lucky that I have really good pharmacists who, helps me find the cheapest way to get all my stuff. And
you had a story that I think is worth talking about, because when I heard this story, it was like, my God, this is America. Tell us a little bit about going to your doctor and the medication, etc.
So a few weeks ago, I ran out of blood pressure medications and I couldn't afford to go to the doctor. My doctor had me set up where I was going once a month. Told him I couldn't afford that. He shifted me to once every 3 months. I told him I couldn't afford that. And I ran out of medication. And being a stroke survivor, my blood pressure medication is critical to keep me alive. Essentially, I take 3 different blood pressure medications. I went 3 weeks without those. My blood pressure was extremely high. And no matter what I did, trying to talk to my doctor, begging and pleading with him to at least give me a partial refill till I can raise the money to go to the doctor, he wouldn't. He kept saying it's protocol, that he checks on me, all these things, despite me, when I go visit him, basically just checks my blood pressure. He doesn't do blood work, doesn't do urinalysis or none of that stuff. So,
wait, you have high blood pressure and he doesn't do a urinalysis?
Right.
Amazing.
Or blood work.
Or
Right.
blood work. That's amazing.
Right. So I turned to my pharmacist, which I brag on HEB as much as I can, because as an institution, a grocery store, they're legendary in Texas. Went to my pharmacist at HEB, and she gave me enough prescriptions to get me through to my next doctor's appointment for free.
Mm-hmm.
So, she, out of the three, she gave me the ones that both her and I felt were the most important. And I credit her for keeping me alive till my doctor's visit yesterday. And I got my refills on my blood pressure medication this morning. So I'm starting to feel like I'm stabilizing a little bit, starting to feel a little bit more normal again. Chest pains are going away. But it was scary, and, I'd posted on Twitter about it. The tweet went a little bit viral, a couple 100,000 views. A lot of people commented. A lot of people offered advice. An insurance consulting firm from Austin gave me advice on how to qualify for the Affordable Care Act. So I'm going to try to do that in the next couple of days. They told me that, if I have any issues, to feel free to call them and they'll help me, guide me through the process for free. That's legendary stuff right there. A lot of people talk smack about social media, but social media could be very, very useful. To say it's not real world is a huge mistake, because there are real people on social media, and a lot of times those people matter, and I feel like they saved my life.
Well, you have to know how to use it. And again, a lot of people use it for good. I mean, I'm pretty sure, I've seen you give good advice on social media. There are a lot of people giving good advice on social media. You just have to know how to take it. Now, your thoughts about the healthcare. I understand that you attempted to get Medicaid, and they just simply turned you down.
Right. And essentially what the woman on the phone told me was that if I had children, qualifying children, I could have gotten it. But in the state of Texas, and because I do have somewhat of an income, more than $300 a month, I can't qualify. And that's that gray area, that I was talking about earlier with the Affordable Care Act. You either have to make, a little bit over, like 150% over something, the poverty line, or, under the $300 to get Medicaid. So there's this gray area where, if you don't qualify for anything, you're paying cash, and there are no discounts when you're paying cash. You don't have anybody to advocate for you. You have yourself. And, based on the story I just told you, we see how far that gets you. I tried to advocate for myself with my doctor, didn't work. With my pharmacist, it did. Put me at a huge risk. I found it shameful that a doctor would hold life-saving medication hostage over $80. But, it's got me where I'm looking for another doctor. I'm looking at different healthcare programs now, because, we have Harris Health here in the Houston area. We have, what a lot of people call the Gold Card. There are a lot of different programs that I previously didn't qualify for that I might qualify for now. So I'm starting to look into that, looking at clinics, nurse practitioners, different options, something that might be cheaper, easier to deal with. But there's not there when you consider the amount of people that are in a situation like mine, there aren't enough of these resources for us. We can't live in a society where we're relying on people's kindness or, philanthropy. It kills me, because these billionaires they get hailed for their philanthropy all the time. But if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't need their philanthropy, in the first place.
If they would pay their taxes, we would. Right. If they would support Medicare for all, if they wouldn't be putting out policy papers or paying for the think tanks that put out policy papers to try to get people turned against the kind of healthcare that every industrialized or every advanced country has, meaning every single one of their citizens have healthcare as a right, it wouldn't be this way. One of the things that we have to show is that this can happen to anybody. You were working as a contractor, your own business, and you happen to get a stroke.
Right. And I tell people this all the time. And we used to say this all the time, in a bit of a joking manner, like, everybody's one paycheck away from being homeless. You're one, medical event away from being poor, from going bankrupt. And then it happened to me. And I lived that. And, man, I mean, talk about a life change. The good side to that, and I try to find the silver lining in everything, is I wouldn't be a journalist, right? If that didn't happen. So there's a bit of a turning point there. I re-educated myself. I tried to shift to something that I could maybe earn a living from. The problem with that is that no matter how many jobs I've applied for, my disability restricts me from getting those jobs. And no company's going to openly admit that, right? They can deny you employment for a million reasons in Texas. Right. It's a right to work state. But I know exactly why they're denying me. And that's because, I'm limited in the amount of hours I can work, availability, my own obligations. I have to go to the doctors constantly. I do my own physical therapy. I can only sit in a chair for so long before I have to get up, move around, lay down, something, because I have a lot of health issues from being a contractor. I destroyed my body. I have 5 herniated discs, and things like that. So, it's not an easy existence, but I still enjoy it. I my grandkids, I have my kids, they're all healthy. Everybody's doing well. And we try to support each other as much as possible. And my oldest son comes through for me a lot. Right. So yeah, I mean, we have a pretty good sense of community, and that really does help.
It's good to have the sense of community, but it's also, it's important that what we have is for a government that really serves we, the people. Right. And that is something that we don't have. So, Arturo, I wanted to get your story in, because what I do is I try to get a lot of real stories of people who've gone through their own health experiences in America. Because many people, I like what you said, you're always a job away, a paycheck away, an illness away from something disastrous happening to your own personal economy.
And I just want to be clear that I wasn't living paycheck to paycheck when that happened. Right. I had a substantial savings, but it bankrupted me because, insurance wouldn't cover a lot of things. I had to pay everything in cash.
Arturo, my wife went in to get a kidney biopsy. A kidney biopsy. She was in there for 4 hours total. The bill was $28,000.
Holy cow.
The insurance paid, I don't know, their percentage, and they've still trying to get 6,000-7,000. I think it's 5,000 or 6,000 from us. We're not going to do it.
Right.
We're not going to do it because, again, it's thievery. It's a transfer of wealth because they have it. You have no choice. It's extortion. And what we have to do is what we continue to do here, my brother, and that we are doing the work necessary. We are doing the work necessary to get the work done. We are doing the work. So I want to thank you so kindly for giving this interview. Absolutely. Because we need to make sure and keep the people informed and let folks know that what we're telling here are real stories.
Yeah, our stories need to be told. If our government took care of everybody who was in my situation, it's really a drop in the bucket when you consider how much money we spend on so many other ridiculous
Think about
things.
that. Imagine if we didn't invest all that money sending those bombs to Palestine and to Israel. How much could we have done for our own people? Arturo, thank you so kindly for this interview, and you have a wonderful rest of your day.
You too, man. Thank you, Egberto. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to come on your show.
Igualmente.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number 1, subscribe to our channel. And number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.